just a general idea. Obviously, the first thing I'll say about check rides is that every DPE, which stands for Designated Pilot Examiner, is different. Obviously, different people do things a little slightly different. But thankfully, we have a document called the ACS, which stands for Airmen Certification Standards. And the ACS, this is how I define it to my students. If we think of an airplane, the airplane has a book called the POH, Pilot's Operating Handbook. And if we think of a clever way to explain what the POH is or what its purpose is for, the way I think of it is the POH is a document intended to put the pilot and the airplane on the same page. Essentially, it's just like the operating manual for your car, right? So it's a manual, it's a document which has information in it, and its purpose is in order to bring the pilot and plane sort of together, if you want to think of it that way. It's an odd way to think of it, but it sort of drives the point home. So if we think of a POH in that way, the question becomes, well, what is the purpose of the ACS? And just like with the POH's purpose is to bring the pilot and plane to be on the same page. The purpose of the ACS is to bring the pilot and the DPE, the Designated Pilot Examiner, on the same page for the check ride. And here's what I mean. The ACS has very specific items, very specific topics, very specific maneuvers and takeoffs and landings. Very specific stuff. Now, imagine that there were no document, and every DPE could show up to the check ride and to their own accord, just do whatever they wanted to do. They could have you do steep turns, they could not. They could have you do steep turns at 45 degrees of bank. They could have you do steep turns at 60 degrees of bank. They could have you do whatever they want. You would see, you would understand, first of all, it would be really difficult to tailor the training environment in general in order to send people to DPEs who just will throw anything at you. So specifically from a flight training standpoint, not knowing what's coming, even to a little extent, makes it very difficult for training, because you could spend months doing everything and then the DPE shows up and he tells you, hey, he asks you a question that you never even heard of. Or what if a DPE showed up and in their opinion, the question they asked you is suited for a private pilot, but another DPE thinks that that question is suited for a commercial. And so you see how with no standardized something, it would be a mess. So the FAA has this document called the ACS, and in there, it specifically specifies all the topics and the information that you as the pilot, the student pilot, will be tested on and asked about. Now, of course, humans being humans, every DPE might approach, maybe even interpret, and definitely ask the questions in a different way, because different people are different people. But at least what the ACS does is it allows the student to show up to the check ride with the knowledge of, here's the takeoffs and landings I'll be expected to perform. Here are the tolerances for my steep turns, meaning there's no secrets, nothing, everything's on the table, right? If your tolerance is 45 degrees and you only go 30 degrees, or if your tolerance is 200 feet on altitude and you lost 400 feet, well, there's no secrets. So the ACS allows check rides to be conducted in a much more transparent manner, which is a good thing.